I'm very excited to be here with Series 1, Episode 1, chapter, which is about Chapter 1 in the book. And I will introduce my partner in crime here in just a minute. But this episode is going to be covering the twerking rhinoceroses. So, Tom, I'll introduce you on the next slide, but I know you got a chuckle out of this one. Everything's got a, cute, clever theme because we're here for, entertainment and education, basically.
I take it the one with your logo on it on the left and the blue, it's you, which then by default, I get the one on the it's
The one on the left is supposed to be a girl. But anyway, let me introduce Tom. Tom and I have been business partners for a very long time. You can read more about Tom or understand his business at his website. But without further, let me see if I get my words right. Further ado, we're going to jump right into this show. And at the beginning of these shows, I'm not going to do like this, there's so many how-to videos, the new shiny thing. I want to talk about some of the major strategic impact and how to operationalize those things. So real quick on OpenAI Dev Day. Tom, did you get to see this? Did you get to see a piece of this?
I did.
Okay. What struck me was that Coca-Cola was already doing a generative AI campaign to promote Diwali with cards. And so this is a big deal, right? When a big brand does it, it means they're setting the precedent for user-generated content and influencers at a whole new level, right? So, go ahead.
I mean, we're going to see every major brand doing it because the agencies are on it. And when Coca-Cola sets the bar, which they do for content like this, you just can't get away with something less than that anymore.
Yep. And so in the pilot, I spoke about this for a minute, but what I was talking about was that websites are going to fundamentally change. Excuse me, I always have these baby burps, which no news anchor or on-air personality or even podcaster does on screen. But anyway, Tom, did you get to take a look at this G2 AI bot here I'm showing on the right?
Yeah, I actually spent a fair amount of time with it. And, again, I guess the best way to look at it is it's going to take away this idea of, you search and search and you search and you refine your search and you search and you search and now it's really this, what do you need?
Yeah, I did this kind of search on Bing, which I've been using a lot more because they've got, the Copilot ChatGPT stuff built in. But then when I went over to G2, what's going on here in the right is that I asked a bot on a website. Now, if you know G2, they basically generate leads for marketing. They give you grids, and they're like the digital version of what the Gartner, analyst stuff used to be, and still is. But here I'm asking it sales questions and it's answering, right? So this is dramatically different, just dramatically different, right? So we wanted to, just point out marketing and sales is about to go through just this major reconciliation. All right, and then let me move this one out of the way. Let's move you over here. No, we'll keep us in the middle. So what are computers going to do in the future? And Tom, as you know, when I was at Pivotal.io, which was spun out of VMware and had a relationship with EMC, we would talk about the science and the capabilities at the hardware level to talk about what's going to be able to support in terms of applications. And this Ray Kurzweil, he was an early Apple guy and he's considered a futurist, but he put out this diagram and it's just insane, right? Can you see what he's talking about with the different computer types? And like in 2001, an insect brain, it could do a mouse brain. Now, 23, they're saying it can be one human brain. But what is your take on what this means in terms of software applications and the ability to create value for a company? Because that's mainly what your consulting and advisory work does, is figure out how do we create value. Do you have a take on this curve?
Well, most people haven't realized just how impactful this is. Uh, because you're talking here about $1,000 of compute power gets you the equivalent of this. Well, we're applying a lot more than $1,000 worth of compute power all the time, and it's just it is hard for us to imagine what can be done this way. I mean, we're having a tough time now with just some of these early things with LLMs in the past year and a half. When you have this much compute power available to do things which generally people just couldn't imagine computers doing before, or software doing before, or if software did it, you would have to do all sorts of steps and make all sorts of decisions along the way, oftentimes with large teams of people providing inputs in order to get those things to occur. And we're fundamentally breaking that paradigm.
Yeah.
And again, people don't think that way in terms of how they organize a business or in terms of how they apply compute power to get a job done.
Yeah.
So all of us are going to have to step back a little bit and say, what's really possible here? And look at not from the perspective of, if I can't connect all the dots today, well, therefore it isn't good. It's really
right.
The rate of change that we're seeing.
It's
if you're doing 60, 70, 80% of the way downfield in a few minutes with what would have taken man months to man years, that's a big
the productivity is insane, right? So yeah. So let me point out one more thing and we'll go to the next slide. And we're always keeping track of our time here. Our goal is to get it to a 45-minute show, but we're at 5 minutes right now. And the last point I want to make for those that are, the prior couple of slides are really trying to point out to executives, more or less, don't ostrich with your head in the sand and don't wait. Like, your team is going to be 10 and 100 times more productive. And one thing I want to point out with this ridiculous compute power is that, where's my draw? Do I have it? Is that here, I can basically code in English, and developers are doing this, right? I can write something in English and I either train the bot, which is some kind of code and data on the back end, or I can ask it to, in English to create code, right? And then what I mean by this one is when I chat with GPT, I can give it code and English. And I can use the English with variables, almost like templating systems. So we'll get into that. But on the next slide, we'll talk about how one bot can actually replace human brains already, which is not quite what Kurzweil was talking about. In any event, this diagram is one we came up with because it and the next diagram kind of talk about where the world's going. And we don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but you've got these areas that we focus on and that a lot of companies have to focus on. And so you got one person playing with a bot in sales and somebody in products and services here. I should use my thing. You got, somebody here with products and services. This person's using it strongly. This person's not. And you got the same thing in marketing. And you're all trying to get to some kind of bot or bots that make money. And this is step 1. So when we go to step 10, we have a whole different mindset. In sales, and we'll talk about this more, you probably have, some structure of a sales organization. Well, are these BDRs? Are these frontline reps? Are these, automated emails? What's going on? And the same goes for the rest. And of course, this whole thing is kind of in a neural network architecture. But Tom, between this slide and that slide, well, this slide and the prior slide, what are your quick thoughts in a minute or so?
All right. Well, in most cases, when people approached automation or software applications in the past, every one of those bots that's in a different box would mean either a centralized development effort off the same platform and still interaction between the groups with defined interfaces or layers of, that would work with each other. Or if they were done independently between those different groups, they would oftentimes have to be large bits of integration, software integration that had to go on between those or among those. And that integration and that interaction between each of those things was probably one of the highest costs and the highest amount of inflexibility in the overall system or application. That took
Yeah.
the most effort. And now we're looking at a paradigm where those integration costs can be reduced to almost zero. The integration time can be reduced to minutes to hours. The testing time can be mostly automated. And you can make these things so that they are essentially growing in knowledge and capability the more they're used.
Yeah.
That changes things. This is not a traditional systems diagram. A traditional
No.
systems diagram like this would be overwhelming complexity, time, and inflexibility over time. And
Yeah.
this is just the opposite.
Yep.
So diagrams like this can just convey something which is essentially very, very different. We have to have a richer way to convey some of these abilities.
Yeah, the old processes won't work, and there's a reason we put step 1 and step 10 on here, right? So this is kind of the intro of our show normally, and what I'm going to do is segue to kind of the next segment. Real quick, I always dedicate the show. I dedicated the book, the Generative Sales and Marketing Organization. The show goes with a book, which is where a lot of these pages come from, but I dedicate it to my daughter. And I always want to start off with gratitude. I appreciate everyone that I've ever interacted with in business with. I've learned from so many people. Tom's been a huge business partner of mine, someone who's always been a mentor and a partner. But if we move this for a second, I just want to say, let's take a moment and pause. Big breath. Tom, you didn't do the big breath, man. What's up with that?
I got big breaths all the time.
Okay. So if you learn something, if you laugh, please repost this, and we're looking at adding a Patreon and stuff like that. And again, I mentioned Tom, but this is something we do. Contact either one of us. And in this episode of the Twerking Hippos, you can see we've got this rhinoceros with a red and a blue pill. And that is the theme of the book, right? It is going back to the movie The Matrix, right? And one is staying in this kind of the blue pill where you're oblivious to what's going on around you, but you're content. And then the red pill is like, holy moly, we are like, it's a different world, right? And so in the book, you'll see a lot of these green pill, red pill stuff, and a lot of different graphics. But in episode 1, we're going to cover chapter 1. We're going to go through some whiteboards, and we're going to give a ChatGPT demo. All right. And this is it's really a feature. And Tom, this will probably be a surprise to you, but this feature is one. Oh, and I got a fancy animation, but I'm not going to put it on right now. I'm calling it should be the CEO perspective, and these are just filters I'm adding to the same image, right? But maybe we change this to CEO point of view, but I think it is the generative executive officer might be what's coming. And so the idea here is that we're going to, diagram something real quick and talk about it purely from the CEO perspective, because we also go down into the weeds from the top of the org chart to the bottom. And I just wanted to point out one thing, and then Tom, we can flip over to your whiteboard if you have some thoughts. But if this is the GEO, right, the investors or the board or Wall Street, right, are all having influence here. And at the end of the day, right, we all know it's about money. And so when you look at their org, right, you're going to have, CFO, you're going to have other back office, you're going to have, some type of post-sale customer experience, you're going to have sales, and you're going to have marketing. If the CEO or GEO, whatever it is, and some people are already doing this clearly, but they're going to have to look at this whole world through the Gen AI lens. And that means this department, each one of these need to change. And it's a big deal, right? It's a really big deal, the CEO point of view. Tom, did you want to flip over to your whiteboard or?
Actually, I don't want to redraw your diagram. What I do want to point out is that what the GEO is really doing is saying, I am the caretaker and the ultimate organizer of the knowledge base, the LLM master for the organization. Okay, that knowledge base comes from many different areas, but it has to be able to be orchestrated so that no particular area is optimizing at the expenses of the others. And so that's sort of a viewpoint. We've seen that start to occur in the past, with people who own maybe the order management process, in a more of a pan-organizational perspective. But this is much larger than that.
Yeah.
And that concept of owning that knowledge base, because the quality of that knowledge base is what's going to differentiate your firm. And that's going to be your major source of competitive advantage. That person, in that role, which is unique at this point, or I shouldn't say unique, but it's very rare, except in some of the larger AI firms. That will probably fall to the CEO for a little while, and then it'll just be something that the CEO can't do once it becomes institutional.
Yeah.
Okay. Right now, the CEO will be necessary in order to make it happen because it's new and they're breaking rules and changing things. But CEOs know very well that they aren't going to be in a position to do that effectively institutionally on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, they gotta steer the ship in the right direction, but people are scared about this change. People are scared about this change, and so it's gonna take, in the back office, it's gonna take HR and the CIO and these others. And when I was doing AI stuff starting in 2012, there was a big case study or statement that Jamie Dimon made. Is it Dimon or Dinan at Chase?
Yes, yeah, Diamond.
And he got his head wrapped around AI, and they really did some awesome stuff. And you see the technology enabled CEOs going right at it. So any other quick comments before we go?
Well, Jamie's organization, and he's come right out and said to his stakeholders that, because he's one of the leaders in this area, he sees his organization not just leading but pulling ahead, and taking share ruthlessly from what are considered his traditional competitors. He thinks the gap that they have already in place is huge and is only going to continue to grow.
Yeah. So, in this episode, we're going to cover chapter 1. Before we get to more whiteboarding and demos. Oh, you disappeared. There you are. Nice shirt, by the way. I got to compliment you on your beautiful Hawaiian style stuff. But all the images in the book I generated with mainly DALL-E. I tested a couple other things, but I also use this graphic stuff as a paradigm for how to think through the design of these things. Chapter 1's really an executive summary, right? We're going to cover this stuff right here. And if you want to read the book as we go through, of course, you can press pause. But also the book's for download at my website, adambloom.me. And that's what we're going to go over. And before we do that, I just I want to see if Tom knows what this is. So this is Landa Inkwadi Mahala Kuwebhu Saithi Yami Negia Bonga. I probably, totally crushed that, but you know what that means?
I'm wearing the wrong shirt. I do not.
Nope. I think it's Swahili actually for free book download at my website. So, there's LinkedIn stuff posting, but the main thing, there's LinkedIn, it's on YouTube. Um, the main thing is like engagement. We want to have many guests on the show. We want people to send in questions and all that kind of stuff. Of course, follow, subscribe, get notified, etc. But just engage. We'd love to hear from you. All right. Now, just a quick, and this goes right to the Jamie Dimon point, right? Deming, he was the inventor, the reinventor of all the lean Kanzan Toyota stuff, if I remember right. Is that how you remember it, or was he earlier than that?
He tried doing it here in the U.S. and got pretty much snubbed, but was
Yep.
accepted post-war Japan.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then his work became the basis for what turned into lean production later.
Yeah. So you can kind of thank this guy for lean software, but this is one of his biggest quotes, right? And this is what he was trying to tell people. You don't have to change. And you hear, Jamie Dimon saying, yeah, some of these aren't going to survive. So important to keep in mind. And certainly, I designed this book so that people could chop up different pieces and reuse it and things like that. But it's a big deal quote. And then I know we're about 20 minutes in, but just to quickly remind people, here's what our goal is about this show. We want to help people improve business outcomes with generative AI or AI and related technologies. And here's, our ideal customer profiles. I think technologists who are business oriented are going to be very interested in it too. And goal number 2 is we want to go on this journey together. I was talking to really top-notch Silicon Valley chief product officer the other day, and he was like, you guys are just on to something here. And also a pretty big time Silicon Valley VC with like 5 unicorns under his belt. But they believe the market is just really, there's innovators, and then the rest of the market really needs to catch up. So we're trying to go on this together. And here's the sweet spot. We showed you our bot architecture, but this is what Tom was referring to earlier. How do you get these 3 groups to work together in a seamless customer experience that's driven by generative AI, right? And so again, this is where the shift is right here. All right. Segment 1. I guess that was pre-segment 1. So segment 1, again, you called me the rhinoceros on the left, which is the girl rhinoceros. But this segment's brought to you by, I made up McRhinos, since she's downing a bunch of stuff. But it's brought by a pretty picture made with Dolly. And we're still trying to figure out sponsors and whatnot, but I am dedicating this segment to Suno. If you don't know Suno, it is an AI music maker. I play multiple instruments, and I have for 20 plus years, and this thing blows your mind. If you know how to write and track and sound engineer and all that stuff, this thing is just mind blowing. All right. So
Adam, I have to say something about Suno.
yeah, go ahead.
I have almost no musical capability, and I use Suno all the time.
Yeah, me too.
Things that I like to listen to, and I would never consider myself a mixer, a composer, or anything else. And yet I've had people ask me, who is that? What is that? Why is this? And it's just stuff I like, and I've been able to modify it and do more of it. But it's opened up a whole range of what I guess you would consider that artistry to someone who's primarily viewed as an engineer.
There you go. Yeah, if you
Yeah.
hadn't checked it out, here's an example. These are all top ones. Every one of these are created by a bot. You got things you can explore, and people are combining they're mashing up all different types of media. I really believe, I give a shout out to the Suno engineers because and the designers and the founders, because it's one of the greatest innovations I've ever seen in my life, without question. All right. So let's get into chapter one. And uh again, those are the things we're going to cover. Here's the first slide, value migration. And I'm going to just say, we're at 23 minutes. We're about 30 slides in. Some of these slides are faster. We got a couple of minutes per slide. We'll try to speed it up without going too crazy, but we'll keep an eye on the time. Anyway, so just to introduce this slide, Adrian Slowatsky was one of the top management consultants in the world, and he wrote this back in 1995. And this was the primary diagram. If you look him up and you go to like Google Images or something, you should see this. And just to explain it, this is like, what's the market doing? What's the company's revenue? And this is with new products, there's limited stability, but you have high growth and high profit. And then with stability, and Tom, I know you'll have a strong pricing and value and offer perspective on this, but this is pretty much where the market starts to get saturated with vendors. You do know your competition, but you can still carve out a place. And then value outflow, right? That's where like there's just blood in the water and it's a race to the bottom. And so Gen AI technology can force this. So it's not just general products and services that go through this life cycle, which all products and services do, all companies do. And he is pointing this out. I think that in the Gen AI world, and Tom, I'll let you give an estimate on how much time this is going to take, but it's not going to be slow, right? So it's a massive migration of value, right? And it impacts the whole business design. So, Tom, what are your thoughts on this from your perspective of expertise, and how executives, and also in your advisory with PE or VC, how they really need to look at what's going to happen here?
The Adrian Swolowski's graph is this one is what he's known for. There's another little there's another segment that would occur just to the left prior to valuing.
Over here
on the
over here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that's the that's your product development, your offering development. That's where you're doing something that's innovative, and you haven't achieved product market fit yet. You're a lot of money is going into different areas. You're seeing that today in the AI technology areas. Huge funding for AI firms who are at the technology level. And we're already seeing that, hey, in order to play in this game, was it Elon Musk said, in the last few days, if you're not spending at least $10 billion a year, you can't play in the technology side of the AI platform development. So the big players are making big bets there, and the whole ecosystem and others, which then build on theirs, are even larger. But those things all have to deal with innovation and experimentation.
Yep.
And that part really isn't covered well in this area. But that's the driving factor where AI is. It looks chaotic.
It does. It looks chaotic over here, and it is the fastest thing anyone in technology. If you've been in software just for a little while, you're like, holy cow. Sorry, keep going.
Yes. And the graph you showed, Ray Kurzweil's graph earlier, showed that instead of coming up plateauing and leveling out like we've typically done, which gives us our value info and stability areas, because we're seeing an acceleration of that curve. The time in the value inflow and the value stability, that especially that stability area, that's being compressed, and which makes it feel like there is no value stability in many areas. But that compression in that active surging forward, that's the part that makes people uncomfortable. It's chaotic. It upends industries. It creates new winners, and it creates a lot of losers. So that idea of velocity and acceleration through there is something that we have not experienced
ever before,
widespread scale, or this widespread scale before. So that's the big thing that makes this different.
Yeah, I mean, based on the consulting advisory and work and all the people I've been talking to recently about the book, there's a discussion about how long it's going to take. And one of the reasons I wrote this is because you can just see the writing on the wall with who's going to be impacted, and we'll get that into a couple of slides. But this is not going to be slow. It's most tech cycles took 10 years, I think. I think this one's going to move a lot faster. So, all right, let's keep going. This slide, and going back to your comment about Musk, this is really, and I keep saying slide, it's really a page, because this is an 81-page book, and if you were to fold it in half, it'd be about 160 pages, a lot of diagrams. But you can imagine, Ford over here on the left, and he was big on process engineering, right? Big. He was like, okay, this person isn't, folding the metal fast enough. Let me get a new machine in here. And that person went from doing it by hand to getting a machine to do it, right? And so you had all these people that were making parts of a car and putting these parts together. And to me, that's kind of how a modern day business runs. Whether you're in marketing or sales or whatever, you've got your high level, mid level processes, but at some point, you've got a worker doing something and you're trying to help them be more automated, right? Whether it's a back office software app or front office or whatever. And this is really, it is such a dramatic shift. Over here, you've got factory workers and really process engineers who are just coordinating robots. They got to plan, engineer, and coordinate robots. And this is going to apply to white collar work in a big way. Do you have a couple of quick comments about that before we move on to the next slide?
This idea that you're going to have a human in each stage to handle decisions, their inputs into the various areas of software, which has been the mode for ERP and CRM things for the last 25, 30 years. That goes away.
Yeah.
You don't need to have people at each stage of output or amongst the various functions, and coordinating software amongst those suddenly becomes different.
Yes,
remember,
it does.
What AI is doing, it's replacing having to explicitly write out software instructions in many areas.
Oh yeah, and it's doing it in I mean, if I go back to this diagram for a minute, right? This kind of represents the Ford line in some ways, and this represents the Tesla line, right? Yeah. So, okay. So here's the bottom line, and Tom and I have built enough business cases and business plans and blah, blah, blah together to have seen business cases in so many different varieties and formats, startups and what. But this is something, when I've talked to people, they have a hard time believing it. I even talked to a CEO the other day, and they're like, yeah, that's great, but I just don't believe you. Like, is it really possible for you to get this much savings? And so, having been in sales and marketing and product, and I know you have as well, for a long time and done all the different roles, my answer is yes. And I've automated myself out of a job in many ways. And my last employer automated all the solution architecture stuff I was doing. So the main thing I'm saying here is like still use a 3 year period. So this is year one, this is year two, and 90 is year three. It's you only know your company. You know the details of how to navigate this. If you're listening, and please comment and email. Um, but if you're listening, um, you've got to customize this. This is a high level framework. And then the staff stuff is going to shift, which we'll explain. And of course, I use one of my favorite words, malarkey. But I've seen it with my own eyes. And then for those pitching the case, let me move this out of the way. For those pitching the case, look, you can do the mega business case, you can do the pragmatic one, or the basic, I got a right gut feel. You got to start here while you figure out, if you're spending a lot more or even more, and it depends on the side of your company or all that. But that's the intention of this slides explanation. Tom, you've dealt with plenty of CFOs, CEOs, CIOs on budgeting. Do you think this time frame and this change is realistic? What would you say if a CFO is like, I can't believe it?
Yeah, and it's okay for them to be disbelieving, but there's really the thing that I don't see there.
Okay.
We like to say it nicely, I think is the way to put it, and that's the extinction event. Ignoring this by being, conservative, real conservative, or just out and out cynical is not going to prevent an extinction event. And putting an innovation like this into the same framework that you use to justify existing investments is probably an incorrect use of the investment tool of the
Yeah,
the way.
CFOs. I'll just add one thing and go back to it. You see CFOs so many times invest in software with this, ROI and getting people to sign up for it. And they look at like a big project and then, that lasts, I don't know, 6 months, whatever. And then there's incremental improvement. And you can't treat this investment the same way. This is forever changing how everyone in your company does work and how your company, it changes your business design. So if you don't invest this with a long-term mindset, so sorry, Tom, keep going.
But here's the thing is that what we advise people in this area is you can't just hold your breath and roll the dice and expect it will come. And it's really, you have to treat these as learning based projects or initiatives. And it doesn't mean they can't produce or they shouldn't produce great outcomes for you. Okay.
So let me ask you a question about this, Tom, where the CFO and the CEO investment mindset is or should be around this stuff that's framed out here.
Yeah, and really, it's really a strategic decision because you don't have the ability to put hard numbers to it right now. It doesn't mean they aren't real. It doesn't mean they aren't big. And it doesn't mean that you're protected from extinction because you've chosen to ignore them. All it means is that your traditional tools for looking at investment, you don't have data for, you don't have step and repeat, you don't have models that they fit into right now. That's the hard work of applying that innovation to your business. But it has, that's the definition of a strategic investment. And this is a strategic investment. And choosing not to view this that way is a deliberate choice to avoid it.
Yep. So if you're too conservative or you're too cynical, you had mentioned to me offline that some people could have an extinction event if they don't take this seriously, and that goes back to what JP Morgan CEO said, right? He's like, we're just going to take market share from tons of people.
Yeah, mercilessly, because they're giving it to us.
Yep. And the one point here is just this has got to look like a media investment and an AI investment, which is different than a traditional software investment. If you're a CEO or a CFO and you're looking at this as a traditional software investment, it's not. You're going to underinvest. You're going to underinvest, and you're going to put your company at risk.
Yeah, you're using the wrong tools to evaluate it.
Yep. So here's why. Right. So in this diagram, what we've got is, the current place, the current state, and then with generative AI, right? And so we see executives moving here, right? And these should be like the GEO, the generative driven marketing. CMO is going to have a generative AI part to their job description and everyone else. So the executives are going to become Gen AI enabled, but for the most part, they're executives. This is where it's going to get crazy. And we already saw this with Klarna. We have already seen this with IBM. Wall Street's, been very favorable about the reports of downsizing people and using AI to automate it. And so if you're in middle management, you're basically going to operate that not the Ford factory machine, you're going to operate the Tesla factory machine. And those robots will replace a group of people. And, I've talked to people and they're like, either they're scared of it or they don't want to think about it. And this is going to be, we will look back in the history books. This is not going to be a Great Depression, but it is going to be a big deal over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And then the same thing happens with the front line. So there's a front line of people that are going to operate the AI machine. And then there's going to be people that coordinate in between AI machines. And then there's going to be people that aren't necessary anymore. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, let's just talk about the Klarna example. I'm not sure everyone's familiar with that. A Swedish Stockholm-based company. They explicitly said they weren't eliminating a whole bunch of their call center people and others because of their bots, but that's essentially what they did. And their scores for customer sat actually went up. It's considered certainly the future, but they got rid of 700 call center people, and they saw an improvement in customer satisfaction.
Yeah,
and they did that within a year.
Yeah, and it's doable. It is doable. You have the right team. Having been in the call center CRM sector and then with aspects of call center recording, I just sat there and I'm like, well, that makes sense. If you feed it all the transcripts and the knowledge base and that kind of stuff, you're well on your way. You've got like a small language model of some sort that you can then tune. And every company is going to be doing this. I was hiking the other day, Tom, and I ran into this woman. She was a hairdresser, and I chit chat with everyone. And
out in the woods,
huh?
Out in the woods.
Well, this is more of a public area.
Okay.
Yeah. This is over near the Chattahoochee where I am, but it wasn't that random. And she's a hairdresser, and she's like, I talked to a bot ordering a Domino's pizza yesterday, and we've had the IVR and the ability to talk, but this one was just taking orders, right? You don't need the front row person behind the desk to answer the phones anymore. So, all right, so let's keep going. Next, we're going to go on to some of the whiteboard org changes and stuff like that. That's going to be the next segment. Again, you get to be the rhinoceros in the pink this time. You'll be, it's a boy as opposed to a girl, but in this case, I I asked for a little bit of 80s lowrider background as a filter. It did pretty doggone good with that. It would take a normal illustrator. Oh my God, they would have to be amazing to get it done in a couple of hours, I would say. Maybe the best of the best could do it in an hour. Most people, I think, would take a day. Although there's so much like high-end, I guess, clip art these days. In any event, this is 30 seconds, so it's just nuts. And then I'm going to dedicate this to this segment to someone who I consider angel moving on to the traction gap and beyond. So anyway, maybe he'll get on the show one of these days. But the whiteboard section, again, Tom and I are going to kind of have dueling whiteboards, and we're going to unpack some of the things that have been discussed around the book. And Tom, I don't know about you. One thing about this dog thought process, is you got the start, right? And then there's find thing, sniff thing, can it fit in your mouth? Is it tasty? Eat it, right? That's one problem. I think this diagram's hysterical. And then if you can't fit it in your mouth, is it moving? Is it coming towards you? Okay, if not, chase it. If it is coming towards you, run away from it. And if it's not moving, are you allowed to pee on it? That is not a step a dog takes. They just pee on it, right? And then, it's just funny. I'm only going to go through that once. And again, free download at the website, adambloom.me. In this case, what a cute baby rhinoceros, right? Which one do you like better, man? You like that one or that one? You see, I kind of just superimposed the book. I couldn't get him to have the book cover. That would require Photoshop. But which one do you like? That one? They're pretty close to the same. I like the lighter one. Anyway.
I think the implication here is that somehow this is the spawn of the first two they're the last two that you.
Okay. Right. But the point is, I'm able to make a common pattern using generative AI in English and ask it to only change certain things, right? So that applies to text. It applies to tons of things. All right, so
you know who it's applying to most now is our biotech clients who are using it to design drugs.
Yes,
based on patterns of patterns of amino acids that look like an enormous amount of gibberish to humans.
Right.
And we joke about the wonderful rhinoceroses that this is able to create.
The twerking rhinoceroses. Don't forget they're twerking, man.
Yes, and so the same generative AI now is being used to analyze and to generate new proteins.
Yeah,
and that's all the fun stuff aside. That's the part that's probably going to impact all of us.
Yeah.
Go on.
Okay. So with this whiteboard session, we can switch over to yours to get into more detail or what have you. We're at about 50 minutes. We're just going to go with this show and see how long we get it, and then we'll see if we can, cut it down maybe later. But what you typically see, and I numbered these today, is you see these organizations, and ops could be product, somewhere, finance has to fit in here, but to keep it simple, sales and marketing have worked with ops, right? And then in step 2, what you ended up seeing is these CRM pilots where there became marketing ops, there became sales ops, right? And if these were run independently, which a lot of companies still do, you don't have the value of the integrated data like you were talking about before. So this ends up being the spot of interest. And when I was leading this program for CRM at Oracle, it was very clear, especially the handoff between marketing and sales. It still is a big area where the coordination is important. So we're basically saying in this step here, we saw the world go from 1 to 2 to 3. And now we're seeing 2 basically map to 4, right? And instead of it being CRM, it's generative AI pilots. So you've got a salesperson off here figuring out, how can I do my prospect research? And maybe they're using 1 app or 2 apps. Then you got somebody who's doing email, and maybe they're using 1 or 2 apps, and you got somebody else who's doing something else. Same with marketing, right? All this content they're creating, they're doing their own thing. And then ops, let's just call this product. Yeah.
And, those marketing guys are all getting a lot more time dedicated to their golf game now.
I think the sales too. I was talking to somebody the other day, and he's like, the era of the incredible high-end account manager that can pull down a $30 million deal is gone. They're too expensive. In any event, let's call this prod. So again, you got people working with, whether this is documentation. The point is they're doing things uncoordinated. And then what we're saying here is you got to start looking for pilots that overlap. Because if you're going to build some type of language model for marketing or for sales or for product, they should be coordinated. Customer doesn't care whether it comes out of sales or marketing or product. They just want an answer. And so we've got to get to this level 5, right? Where you've got this integrated and it supports all aspects of, the customer experience. So that was the intention of explaining that whiteboard. What are your thoughts here? Do you want to bring up another whiteboard or?
We don't need to hammer this home anymore. You
Okay.
got the main.
Okay. And then I just wanted to also point out, when in B2C is already doing this stuff, right? You can get online and ask about products. In B2C, they're already much deeper into the Gen AI revolution. But in B2B, which is, I don't know, like 75% of my experience, there's without PLG and with PLG. And so when people are trying to, go ahead.
Just so we're clear for everyone, product-led growth is, and the implication of product-led growth means your product is fully censored or wired through all aspects of its use.
And the customer experience, right?
Exactly.
So when we talk about the last slide, the thing I'm just pointing out here is like, if you have people doing these point solutions, that's great. You will get productivity. They can become much more productive. But as soon as you need to talk about coordinating a customer experience and delivering a unified customer experience, that way is not going to work. And again, so the biggest opportunity is, what is the sweet spot here, right? And, where does finance play the role? Because finance is going to have to fit in here, of course. Any other comments before I go to the next slide?
It's all curation of data is suddenly becoming very important in design for curation of data, as opposed to something done ad hoc or as a one-time project. And that's really that production mindset that you were getting at before with the Tesla versus the Ford.
Yep. And part of this, if you're going to have a process engineer that produces like a traditional manufacturing plant, which is what's going to have to be in here to solve for this, you need to have a process engineering mindset. But instead of, creating cars or toilet paper or food or whatever in a manufacturing plant, you're going to be creating content, sometimes with traditional data. But that is the big piece, right? Content. And so I wanted to talk to you about, this is, and I can pop over to your PowerPoint if you want, but what I wanted to do is, like, this is a generic, sales organization. How is it going to change over time, right? Let's say this is a B2B sales organization. Do you want to whiteboard it, or do you want me to? I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
Just keep going. You're doing fine.
So let's just say the sales director is going to now be 50% of their normal job and 50% of what we'll call a generative sales engineer, maybe. Right. And these days, there's sales engineers, there's a lot of companies that are like, I don't want to talk to the sales guy. I want to talk to the sales engineer, or they're educated on both. But let's just call them 50% gen, 50% normal, right? So then what happens to the sales manager, right? So do you now, if that same paradigm exists, and day one it might be 10% and 90%, or sorry, day one it might be, it's already happening, 90% manual, we'll call this manual, and 10%, and then it's going to go to 50 and then maybe 90 or something like that. But in this case, 50-50, do you need this layer? Like, what happens to that layer? Now this layer is coordinating things with the layers below, right? You got your sales development rep or your BDR, you got your multiple sales reps and account executives and sales engineers. But at the sales manager level, if the sales director is getting 50% more out of generative AI, how do we see the sales manager role changing? I think there's two ways, but Tom, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, right now, you don't need to have an expensive person there basically whipping people. So there's you've got the two aspects of that coordinate, you've got overall coordination. Let's leave that for a second. And then you've got the two aspects of the sales management, which is carrot and stick, the whipping people and then the coaching people. Both, by the way, can be done much better with AI.
Yeah.
And there's a high touch sales management role, coaching role, or evaluation role, perhaps an example of how to go do this. The exemplar sales manager, who's basically a great sales rep or a great account rep,
Yep.
who does these things, but he's got a much larger span than he's had in the past. But
Yep.
the role in that the sales manager has already been changing now. Hopefully, moving more towards a coach and a process person. Run the process. With more emphasis there. But do we need to have those expensive guys in those roles? And if we do, we probably always will. But their span is suddenly going to be much, much larger than what it was previously.
Yeah. We see this in the whole product-led growth motion, right? Where you're supposed to have a slimmer sales team and people get to self-serve. And this is a continuation of that. In the traditional sales model, we also see where sales ops is doing such a better job predicting leads and opportunities that one rep, instead of managing like, 6 accounts, let's say, now the lead data, the customer data is basically, and they only got these 6 accounts, is basically going through and saying, I got 120 accounts, but there's only 6 active deals, and I'm going to predict these for you. So you need less salespeople. This is what's happening, right?
Yeah.
And
Was it 9 years ago? We did work for one of the larger printer manufacturers, who was in their 3rd generation of their IoT program with their printers, and it produced tremendous amounts of data. And when we got an initial machine learning model in place on top of that, where then we were able to have a recommendation engine talk about what would be appropriate ways of deciphering that data, the number of people that we needed to service an account fell to a fraction of what it was before. Because before we was dealing with specialists, dealing with complexity, and now we are able to take it to one generalist who handled 2.5 times more accounts. And that was 9 years ago.
Yeah. And so with the BDR, let's just talk about, the outbound sales rep. I think most salespeople still believe, and it's true, that you need somebody doing outbound. People trust that pattern. It's been around for a while. There's a mishmash now of like one of the best practices I've read is, you got to do an email and a LinkedIn and a phone call all in the same time period to really get their attention. I've also seen really great just email content get people's attention, but people are so busy, right? And so the law of the BDR is still like make 100 calls and get one, right? Now, here's the big shift for me coming from a marketing angle is that, it used to be your website and the research customers would do on you was like, I think it was in like 2012 or something, Google came out with a big research that says 50% or 80% of the buying process happens before they talk to a rep, you know, but on a website, when you can ask the BDR questions and frankly, um, the last generation of chatbot stuff like Intercom, it didn't deliver quite on this promise. But when you can ask a GPT on a website any question, you can just send somebody an email and say, "Here's the value prop. Ask me questions," and then you don't need these people. Now, is that guaranteed to work in your company? I don't know, but this is where the BDR is shifting, and then we'll talk about the account executive and the sales engineer. But what are your thoughts on the BDR and Gen AI?
I think BDRs are. I
Don't be
wouldn't call
too mean.
I wouldn't call them an endangered species. I would just say that there's going to be a whole lot less of them.
Yeah,
And what you're going to have is a BDR that handles the occasional thing that wasn't well served when the customer responds back to the GPT answer that says, I can't get what I need. I want to talk to someone. Okay, great. But you're going to need a whole lot fewer of them. And you're also going to have that BDR is also going to be responsible for helping to categorize what just went on so that in the future, the machine can answer it,
Yep.
not him.
Yeah.
So that idea of building the knowledge base from the front line just through usage is a big deal and doesn't require specialized developers in the middle to code everything.
Nope.
That's the big change from what we have seen here in the past.
Yeah.
So that and the ability to build that meaningful knowledge base can occur very, very quickly.
Yes, it can. Extremely quick. And, so I view like if there was, this is SDR, but I'll assume it's a BDR. Let's say we have two of these. One of them to me is going to get really aligned to generative AI, and one of them is going to do maybe some quality assurance. And those two, like on the content, I mean, scale it up some, but those two can, I mean, I hate to say it, I smile, I laugh, but I think the faster we go through this, the better position people will be in. Everyone's got to get Gen AI skills now, or their career is going to be significantly impacted. Anyway,
No, their career will have certainly have changes to it.
yeah.
They'll just be.
Why don't you take the account executive, somebody who's got, 10 accounts all the way to one account, maybe mid-market to enterprise. At the high end of the market, if you're calling on a multi-billion-dollar company, they're used to having an account team if they buy from some vendor like AWS or Azure or Microsoft or Google or whatever. And a lot of those high-end folks, they have a relationship, they have the creativity. This thing's not ready to put together a business plan and presentation, but then there's stuff that can be done. So what are your thoughts about what the AE is going to go through over the next, few years?
Well, I mean, the big thing that AEs always complain about is that can I get enough resources to do something for an opportunity? And we hire creative people in these areas, and they're very creative about trying to find ways to get resources to help them on opportunities, whether they be direct sales engineers or specialists supporting things in different areas. And, immediately, at least on the low-hanging fruit, the Gen AI gives you a long tail of basically interns that have, minimal turnaround time. You still have to coordinate things. You still have to look at what's produced, but suddenly you've got resourcing that you just never had before.
Yeah.
And typically that, in sales ops, which is basically dedicated application programming and analytics, there's always been a backlog there. And so suddenly you've got access to things without that effective filters that we used to say from the development side. And that's very empowering to these guys.
Yeah.
So you're gonna see a lot more creativity, a lot more proposals. You're going to see a lot more interaction for higher quality offerings, and those types of things will all be bypassing the traditional constraints in the process.
Yeah. And the offering will be a higher level of value too.
Well, yeah, you're going to know more about your client. You're going to typically involve more, be more involved with them. You're going to be able to collaborate more with them, have more iterations around it. Again, not dependent on your own internal constraints as much. All things which will, they just raise the bar in a big way.
Yeah.
But your account execs in these areas, for the ones who are focused on the big fish, they're going to find that they will have more resources in a way. In the short term, it'll be more of a crunch on them because they have to read all the stuff and somehow put it.
In the 90s, they had to learn PowerPoint and put it on their resume. These days, it's going to be generative AI. If you don't have generative AI in your resume, you're behind, right?
Yes, but the crunch on them will be, how do I deal with this huge amount of data and information that comes back? Even when AI summarizes it, it's still going to be because they won't have some of the other supporting staff around them, they're going to be in the role of having to do the synthesis.
Yeah.
They will, some will just take what AI gives.
They're going to have to be more multidisciplined, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's going to cause, yeah. And then the others who don't have the big fish, they are going to have just more accounts to deal with.
Yep. So on the sales engineering side, in my last gig, we pivoted. It was a startup. It was a Techstars Foundry Group thing. But the pivot and parting ways was based on automating part of my role as a solution architect. So I'm multidisciplined. I was playing the sales role, the partner role. It was a small company, startup. And I would do the solution architecture, and the CEO would totally kid around with me saying, I'm going to replace you with generative AI. And I knew it was possible because I had already run these pilots. Like, I automated all the marketing stuff I've done, all the sales stuff I've done. And sure as shiitake mushrooms, I got to see this and I was blown away. Not because it could do what I could do, but it could do like 90% at a scale that I couldn't even imagine. We got about 10 minutes left. We're evaluating different conference capabilities.
So in the traditional sales team, the usual constraint is the sales engineers. I mean, that's those resources are the ones that are most tightly scheduled. If you push them too hard with things, their effectiveness drops right off a cliff. They are the constraint for most sales teams in B2B world. And if you suddenly now you have the ability to get 90% of the way downfield right away, those sales engineers are going to be able to do a whole lot more than what they did previously, right? Oh, yeah. Well, and your sales guy who leads the team is going to be able to do a lot more because he's not constrained as often.
I did this firsthand. What would take me, I could get off an hour phone call and put something pretty well together at a high level, but this thing goes all the way down to the data model. Like, it starts making the data model based on the requirements and specifications. Now, it was a simpler app, not a lot of enterprise legacy stuff. It was more new, but still just unbelievable.
I mean, for
Yeah.
a demo, it's a huge thing.
Oh, for a demo, it was like I could get off an hour phone call and send them a link to the app,
Yeah.
like the app I just built for them. That's I could get on a call with you as a prospect and have a preliminary discussion about what you want to build. And what I used to do was do a whiteboard and maybe kind of find a mocked up UI or something to send to them. And then I'd quickly build a very simple data model just to show them like one table, right? This thing does all that and more. Since we're running a little bit short on time, I'm going to skip this next whiteboard, but we're going to go through another show where we go through the marketing side. And I think since we spent so much time, we articulated this verbally, but I'm gonna skip it. All right. Um, and from the pilot, now we're running um, we're running GPTs. We got a little bot army, and I'm putting this here one because it's funny, and who doesn't like Snoop Dogg? I think everybody does. But I'm going to show how we can use, and I mentioned this in the pilot, how we can use ChatGPT to act like different personas. All right. So we're into the ChatGPT. I feel like I'm glitching every time my tongue gets twisted. So we're going to go to the last segment of the show, the demo. This is again you. That's the one from the front cover, and you can see how Reiki, Rhino Nike, just twerk it, right? So hope you like that. That one's for you, Tom.
I appreciate that. You do realize we have a wellness company that does telemedicine that has prescription type stuff. And every time I see the rhino holding the red and the white and the red and the blue pills, these guys would salivate over this stuff
Yeah.
because they're selling the red and the blue pills.
Yeah. So Tom, here's a little joke for you. What happens when you create a bunch of powerful bots that are uncoordinated in a company?
You have friction at scale.
All right. In my view, it's 300 twerking rhinoceros. Is it rhinoceri?
That's an image I really wish that I could not see it. But yes.
My favorite is this guy with his
Yeah, I got that. That's the one that stood out.
Yeah, it's right in the middle. So yeah,
Yeah.
you don't want to create 300 twerking rhinoceroses in your business because it's going to be destructive, right? And that's why the theme of the show is the twerking rhinoceros. I'm not going to speak to this slide. If somebody wants to read about it, great. It's a very quick text summary. Since we're running out of time, when it comes to the twerking rhinoceros analogy, if you've ever noticed in all the Star Wars you've watched that stormtroopers have the worst aim of anything else in the world. Like they can't. Like I'm not even talking about going against a Jedi. Like they just miss everything, right? So you can't program these bots, these clones, to miss the shots, right? In the demo, what I'm going to show you is I use the book as input seed content. It's going to go into Gen AI. It's going to coordinate with this large language model, and I'm going to be able to output marketing answers. It could be sales answers, right? And just to give an example here of how we can start to address some of this. Why is this thing not working? How am I doing on time? We got 4 minutes. We're almost done. I think this show is going to end up being about an hour. Yeah, so we've got 128K context window available in ChatGPT now. I'm not using all of that, but just to be clear, when I talk about input data, the book is, it's not even close to 300 pages of text in one prompt, but That's a lot of instruction you can give the thing, and it will act on it. It will act on it. And so when when I've looked at the C comment, the things that I've done are quality instructions, 8,000 characters, 1,300 words. The book, which is heavier in diagrams, I've loaded quality questions into GPT to fine tune the model. You need human in the middle, HITM. And I just want to point out over here, I am loading instructions to GPT, right? So if people aren't familiar with that, you can tell it to act as a certain persona, which becomes very powerful. And I'm going to show an example. But look, this GPT answers questions from the book. This could be answers from the software documentation, right? Or the sales training manual, right? And so,
Or all the sales conversations from our staff that we digitally recorded for the
yep,
last 6 months.
exactly. And if you don't think the players that are already in that space, like Gong or Zoom or whoever, they're already working on this. They're already working on ways to transform that stuff. So, all right, so let's go to the demo here. Give me one second to prepare it. There we go. All right. So I've got ChatGPT loaded up here, and come on back here. And so I've loaded the book. I just explained that. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask it to do some things for us. So in the spirit of Snoop, I'm going to do a version of it for a CFO. But first, I want to just show you that, I'll just type it. Please summarize the book in 5 words, 25 words, and I don't want it to be too long. And we'll just say 50 words. Then outline the top 10 benefits to B2 software companies. Let's say B2B because it's more oriented to that, although it still applies. All right. So we've loaded seed content, high quality seed content. And this could be used for a salesperson or a marketing person, right? So what is it going to do? I could never do it this fast. It would take me, I don't know, even if I was flying, it's 10 minutes, and this was less than a minute. So that's 10 times faster. And there's some situations where doing stuff like this is going to have a lot of meetings and all kinds of stuff. It could take 10 hours, right? And you can tweak these, which is what I'll explain. You can give it different contexts. You can tell it what's audiences. But look, reinventing CRM with generative AI, right? It explores how this thing happened. This happens. This is a pretty doggone on point summary, right? Enhancing customer engagement. It's not the stuff I have in the front cover of the book, but detailed analysis. I don't know that I call it an analysis, but marketing strategy. So I could ask this to do it again. And then and then the benefits. So according to this generative example, the benefits are enhanced customer insights, which we're doing right now. Right. I'm gonna switch over to a Snoop and a CFO. And yes, we're automating customer interactions. Yes, we're increasing sales efficiency. Yes, to marketing ROI. These are all top ones. Innovative product development, strategic decision-making, cost, enhanced data management, competitive. I would say it nailed it, right? I mean, we could tweak or prioritize or think about some other ones, but any of these jump out at you as particularly bad or good?
What jumps out at me is that the person who wrote the book doesn't have to be the person who put in the prompt to get this sort of a thing out of it, or the person who, or the if you have the collection of organizational knowledge, which can be large, come from all your reps, can come from all your sales development folks, can come from all your sales, it can come from all the different stakeholders who input to it. You've just equipped any person in the organization to do this now.
Yep.
And do it in a high quality way.
Yep.
In fact, I would argue that if you hired a BDR and trained them, they couldn't do this as well.
No.
They couldn't do it as well after 2 to 3 months, unless you gave them this stuff already. If you told them to go look through all the stuff or whatever and then come up with it, that'd be one thing. But they just wouldn't be able to. You wouldn't get as high a quality out of them right away.
Yep. And we could, they could have asked about, if somebody was selling the training around this book, we could have oriented more towards a BDR and things like that. But now I'm going to ask it to. So another consideration in prompting is the memory. How long ago can the GPT refer to prior conversations? And I believe this most recent GPT-4 update, which if I remember, it went to turbo and then back from turbo. But anyway, Anthropic, Microsoft, they're all looking at longer context windows. But if I said, please do the same thing again as above with the word counts and the top 10 benefits, but please make sure you orient the writing towards a CFO, chief financial officer of a B2B software company. Like, all right, let's see if it does it. So, all right, so they like the words maximizing ROI with generative AI, whereas before it was reinventing CRM, right? A little bit more business versus finance. It did okay with that. Strategically enhances financial outcomes by streamlining CRM processes and optimizing marketing and sales investments. Okay. If you want to get 25 words, that's not bad. You can tweak it, you can customize it, but then illustrates the financial impact. So it's leading with financial impact. And then it leads with cost efficiency, which is what they care about most, that they feel they can rely on the most behaviorally, right? And then, come on, Bing. And then, so cost efficiency, of course, they care about revenue generation, investment optimization, scalable customer-centric approaches. So before, and that was the 50-word summary, B2B, focusing on enhanced customer efficiency, innovative revenue streams. So it took the filter of a CFO versus generally, and it wrote it for me. Now, it got me 95 yards down the field in seconds. And once you learn how to operate the machine, right, you can do all kinds of more stuff. So let's do it again. Please do the word count and benefits list again, but act as if you were the famous musician Snoop Dogg. Right, so if you want to hang on. So if you have messaging, which this book basically is, in terms of go-to-market software stuff, all of a sudden you can tweak for sales rep, blah, 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 blah. You can feed it all kinds of filters through, even 10 pages. You can take somebody's job description and filter it and all kinds of stuff, right? So this is just a baby demo, but the power of it shows up as we explained all the strategic stuff in the book and the whiteboard in the prior segments. This shows it come together. And I don't know, Tom, before we laugh about Snoop, how would you kind of summarize this demo in comparison to the whole book?
I mean,
At least what we've covered on this show.
I think it hits the point pretty well. If you look at what people are having to do today, for when you're selling something into an enterprise, if it's an enterprise sale, a B2B enterprise sale, the thing that we found out is the number of people that you need to talk to or part of the decisioning team went from a few years ago, went from 4.5 to 5 people, to get a decision. And I believe right now that has changed. So it's around 8, just over 8.
Wow.
And the generic presentation to all of them is difficult. And what you're finding teams spending more time on is doing things kind of like this. What's in it
we need to personalize our proposal or our deck or our pitch. And
for that, personalize our interaction with that person, which is supported. And so they end up having to create these things, and nobody likes doing them, but it's become kind of what you need to do.
Yeah.
And this allows you to do that basically dynamically.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have a bot do this now.
Yeah.
But the point of it being that it is instead of giving it, here's kind of generally what it is, you guys go sort it out. Or here's all the info.
Yeah, here's a PowerPoint. The writing's up to you. It's different.
Yes. The person on the receiving end is able to really state what he wants, what his objectives are, and ask questions. You move the locus of control to them without adding friction.
Yeah.
And that's very powerful. So it's
very powerful. Yes. I could see if you had some relationship with a CFO, you might send them this, especially if they like Snoop Dogg. But look at this. AI is flipping CRM on its head. So I would need to put it's. This book breaks down how generative AI flips the script, boosting business game and making cash flow smoother. So it definitely did it. Lays out the dope ways, generative AI, changing the CRM game, making interactions tighter, processes slicker, cash flow thicker. And smart AI. Let's make cash flow thicker. I think that should be the new intro PowerPoint slide with Snoop. It just says we make cash flow. According to Snoop, we make cash flow thicker.
You do realize that we have a one of our biotech clients is in the derivative of the cannabis business, and I think we need to go back and revisit them with a better pitch.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. So let's look at the Snoop Dogg style benefits. First of all, money on my mind. It automates the mundane and you stack more green, man. AI kicks up the sales strategy, bringing more deals and dough through the door. $dollar bills. Yeah.
This getting more chuckles out of me than your twerking rhino, really.
We should start with this, I think, going forward. Cutting down the hassle, focus on the big plays, the big boss decisions. Spend smart, keeping it tight on the low. Manage risk before they blow up, keeping the money where it belongs. All about growth, keeping the company fresh, hype up the game, boosting the brand and the bucks. All right, so what we showed here is that we can build a small language model, basically, or a micro language model around some set of content and start to derive and extract all kinds of personalization from it. And
if we were to go back and just reiterate the point, companies have absolute control over those inputs in that small language model.
Yeah.
And the ability to make sure that data process is curated, it's complete, it's not overly representing one group and ignoring others. That is something absolutely under their control, and the quality of that is going to determine the quality of the bots and the performance level that they can achieve. Really.
Yeah. All right. Should I demo anything else before we go through the last couple of slides? Basically wrapping it up.
Yeah, I guess the other thing, if you're gonna play the marketing card here.
Or play the
Is
sales card. I was going to play the sales card.
oh, go ahead. Either
All
one.
right. So, act if as if I like your role. Your role is to act as if you are a B2B. How am I going to do this? Let me think. A B2B, a person who is selling training for the book, the Generative Sales and Marketing Organization. And I'm not optimizing these prompts. I'm just typing. All right. Please suggest what the top 3 sales questions are that prospects would ask. That's pretty crazy, right? I mean, outcomes, tailoring, and what's your background? I mean, now, please answer those questions. Maybe we should start with the demo. Anyway, the top 3 sales questions that prospects are likely to ask. Okay, now please answer those questions as if you were Adam Bloom, which I also have myself in here, the author of the Generative Sales and Marketing Organization, besides the organization. Let's see if this will work. So I basically loaded a deep profile on me so that it knew my persona. From this training, your team can expect a deep practical outcomes.
Well, the other aspect, just to draw the contrast, everyone wants Snoop as a trainer.
Okay, all right. Can you answer it again as if you were the famous rapper Snoop Dogg? All right, but seriously, the quality on this, I mean, it's
Yeah.
somewhat generic. I could have given it a lot more prompts. We'd have to go back here and prioritize, some of the messaging. So my training program is highly customizable. Okay, well, that answers it. Bring a wealth of expertise and a proof track record. I don't like how it answered that, but we could tweak it. So we'll go back to the deck after it answers as if Snoop Dogg is my sales rep. All right, check it. It's gonna my training is gonna hook you up with all you need to know about flipping your CRM and marketing game with some tight AI skills. Expect to see your customer insights get deeper than my lyrics. Your marketing is personalized as my playlist, and this is good. Here's what Snoop Dogg says about it. We're talking about boosting them conversion rates and cutting down on those long waits, all while keeping your wallet fat. Every crew's got its own vibe. We get that. We tailor this jam session. Top dogs in this game. So it is, it's nuts. And then I don't know if I can do this. Can you create a photograph of the salesperson named above? Just curious. Play with this all day. All right, I don't have Dolly in here. Oh wait.
Now they restrict it for famous individuals.
Okay. No. It's because I don't have Dolly in here.
All right.
And Dolly's taking a minute to load. There we go. Okay, now it's going that. Um, please use a famous rapper from the 1990s who is now known as a friendly, charming TV, movie, music star. Give them dreadlocks, jewelry, glasses, and spliff. All right. Let's see what happens, and then we'll go back to the see what happens. Not that Snoop has dreads; he's got them sometimes, but all right. Let's see what happens. This is my new salesperson for the book, or for your software, or whatever. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na. Da-na-na. Oh, wow. Look at that. That's the sales guy. Look, he's got a green beard. This is so awesome. I had
Yeah,
fun creating all the images. Yep, that's a version of Snoop in some ways. This is my sales rep. Yeah. I like how he's got like the semi-Bitcoin necklace here. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so to close up, and this has been an extra long show. We're going to figure out how to cut it down, but last book promotion and Paku. No, this is the Swahili one. I forget what the first two are on there. I've been taking notes, but I didn't do it. This is, I think, the Swahili one. Or Zulu. Zulu. Pakua Kitabu Bure Kwinwe Wavuti Yangu, which is Swahili for free book download at my website. And there it is. We're officially done with episode 1. And thank you for joining us to discuss how to avoid or appropriately use twerking rhinoceroses or rhinoceri. I still haven't figured out what it is. Bye, everyone.